shutdown, but it was a partial shutdown. Some of the bills had been agreed to, and so those departments continued to run.
I mean, the original question was about the phone calls and the pressure that the people are putting on the politicians. So
that
what
it is
happens?
just starting. It is just starting.
Okay.
I mean, I have gotten emails, primarily some phone calls, weighing in one way or another. You know, take the GOP budget, take the governor's budget, you know, compromise. And to me, that is what we need to get to. We all come to the legislature with our personal beliefs. And those are great, and some people have very strong personal and religious convictions. Those are great, but when you get to the legislature, you have to step beyond your own personal beliefs to represent the beliefs and the feelings and the policy, you know, beliefs of your whole community, even those who didn't vote for you. And I think we haven't quite, particularly for some of the newer freshmen, and there's a large number of them, haven't quite gotten to that place where they have to step beyond their own thoughts to the thoughts of what's best for the whole state of Minnesota, what do all their constituents, even the ones that didn't vote for them, what will be best for them. And so I think that's that next phase, and I think we'll be getting to that soon. Should have been gotten to a month or two ago, but it's taking a little bit longer. Senator Senja mentioned that at the chamber meeting this week, that it's taking a little bit longer for some of the new freshmen to get to that point, and we need to get there soon.
I will say it's real interesting. I get a lot of emails and phone calls and letters too. Not as many letters these days as years ago when I was in the House. But the interesting thing I've noticed in looking at all of this constituent communication and that of years ago when I was in the House is it's a little bit different. So in many cases, the communication we get from our constituents is much more strident. And I wonder if that's just kind of a function of the fact.
You mean more partisan, do you mean?
I don't mean partisan, I mean more set in their beliefs as far as this is how it's got to be, and there's really not a lot of middle ground here. And I kind of wonder if that's because, you know, we all have our iPods, we choose what news channels we want to listen to, we listen to them when we want to listen to them, you know, we select our own music that we want to listen to. So it's kind of like, you know, when I was growing up, probably when you were growing up, you know, we had 3 news channels. And that's what we chose.
And I think
there was a culture,
had a huge
and there was a
impact on
cultural
our communication.
narrative there when we were growing up. Maybe not so much. You're a bit younger there, Donnie. But and I kind of wonder if that cultural narrative is missing, so to speak. So it's real interesting in the communication. It's a much more kind of cut and dried.
Do you guys hear more from the other party, more from people that you believe to be from the other party?
I would say it's very, at least my communication is very mixed. And I have a large base, as when you've been there a little bit, you start getting a base of people you communicate with regularly. And it's you know, both parties, independents as well. And so I would say I'm getting a very mixed message. I mean, not mixed messages, although they're there too, because the folks on either side are so far apart. But also a lot of just community people who are saying, come to a compromise. We sent you there to do your work. Compromise and come up with a solution that's good for the state.
And that's actually what I'm hearing too. I think people are really tired of the finger pointing. I know I'm tired of it. It's like, let's just get to the solutions, which is why I can't wait for your last question. Let's talk about how are we going to avoid this shutdown? Or if we're out of time on the timeline, how are we going to make the shutdown very short? The bottom line is, shutdown or not, we have to come to a budget
It
here.
seems like they're getting in the room and not getting anywhere. It's not that they're not, I mean, and
they're meeting regularly.
They're meeting, and so it doesn't, you know, talking about solutions is great, but they've had plenty of time now to do these things. But the problem is, I mean, it's not as if people are sitting down and figuring out, okay, how can we meet in the middle? It seems like both sides have said, this is my stake in the sand, and this is where I'm staying, and they're waiting for the other side.
Well, I think they're not going. I think we're going to have to move beyond that. Actually, I think we should see, like in the next week and a half, we're going to need to see a group that is neither one of those groups. Maybe you'd call it a rump group. I'm not exactly sure. But the point is, we have to go beyond.
You mean like a group of Democrats and Republicans that are not part of the negotiation?
Absolutely. I think this is going to happen. I think this is going to happen. And you should see a group of us, I plan to be part of the solution, that is going to look at how are we going to move forward here. The things that I think we can do, the things I hope we can.
How does that happen? I'm sorry for interrupting, but how does it happen that how does that thing form? Is it Kim calls Carla and says?
That's what happened last time. There was a small group of 6 or so folks that got together and invited a few other people, came up with a solution, brought it forward, and actually that had, I think there's more. It's going to be tougher this time because last time that happened, it was a legislature with only a vote or two difference. It was when it was 66, 67, or 65, 66, whatever it was at that time. So it just took a vote or two to be able to swing something. We have a much larger gap to fill. So it'll be a little tougher to do. But I do think one of my constituents the other day, who's a Republican, said to me, you know, we do have to have some sort of revenue as a solution. How about let's just capping it for 2 years? Let's put that 2% increase in, but it sunsets after 2 years. I could live with that. And I think that's what we need to get to up there at the Capitol. We need to get to, okay, we need some revenue. What revenue can we live with? And can we do something to stem its ongoing effect if that's a concern for folks? Get through the recession, if you will.
Governor Dayton, when he was running, his big thing was tax the wealthy. He says the rich aren't being taxed enough. That was his big thing. That's his philosophy. That's where he wants Minnesota to go. But for Republicans, I mean, you guys are in charge now of the legislature for the first time in a long time.
We have both chambers for the first time.
And so, I mean, is this an opportunity? And this is a question that's going to please conservatives, and it's not going to please liberals. But is this an opportunity for Republicans to change Minnesota fundamentally from a liberal state that maybe is taxed more to a more conservative state? Do you think that is a...
Well, you always have to deal with the realities in which you live. And while many are concerned that we've had 38 years of government growth and growth beyond what we can afford, the fact of the matter is big ships turn slowly. And then we have the reality that the governor must sign anything that comes out of the legislature. So that is kind of the beauty of our system. As messy as it is, and as much as we don't necessarily like it, the fact of the matter is that there is an administrative branch that needs to sign the legislation that the legislature passes. So I don't believe that there's any real value in putting forth ideological positions that have no chance of passing. I think we have to work to move Minnesota forward. At the same time, we cannot divorce ourselves from the fact, the reality that our demographics are changing, not just in Minnesota, in the country as a general.
Sure.
And we absolutely have to look at sustainable government.
Okay.
For government to continue.
And I'm pleased with hearing that, because what was presented was a bill that could not be signed by the governor. That's what happened, and we need to get beyond that. And if Senator Nelson is saying that the Republican Party can come up with a solution that can be signed, that's all we need.
Well, I don't think it is the Republican Party.
He has given some already from, I think his original plan was taxing more people, and he has said, I'll take half of what I asked for and I'll raise the bar so it's people making 150 or couples making 300,000. I'll give you that. I'll cut more and I'll ask for less revenue. He started the process, and that other hand hasn't been reached out to grab it to say, okay, and here's what we can give and what we'll be willing to give up.
And you think that's because Republicans don't need to right now? Do you feel like it's because they feel like they can do this?
Well, I don't know what they're thinking, but I think that whatever their philosophy is has caused a government shutdown, or potentially has caused a government shutdown, and we need to quickly get beyond the campaign rhetoric into leadership, statesmanship, and policy setting, and we haven't gotten there yet.
I will say and I appreciate the fact that Representative Norton said, well, I can't ascribe motives. We know the first thing in statesmanship is you don't ascribe motives to people. When you do that, you really limit your potential to get things done, and nor do you name call. Those are things that are not helpful. But I do think it's beyond Republicans and it's beyond Democrats. I do think it's going to be this rump group that needs to get together. Some of the things that I think we need to be looking at, the governor wants a large bonding bill. Republicans, we think it should come after the budget first, bonding next year. Fact of the matter is, it's a 2-year budget cycle, a biennium. Maybe we need to look at that bonding bill now. That's something the governor's really interested in. New revenue, I think we may see some gaming. The governor's kind of indicated an interest in that. I'm not a big fan of gambling, but I do think the Racino proposal has merits. It actually is, I like the fact that it's focused on economic development. That's actually Senator Senjum's bill in the Senate, not sure who has it in the House. So, I mean, I think there are some things that we can do to resolve this. And again, it's not going to be just my party, it's not going to be just Kim's party. It's really going to be a group coming together. In the Senate, we just have a 3-vote majority, so it's a very slim majority, a little different over in the House.
Don't you guys think, though, that somewhere, is there somewhere somebody is in a back room going, we could benefit from a shutdown? A shutdown will actually lead to what we want to have happen. Is there somebody somewhere that you think that has that perspective? Because if nobody does, then we shouldn't have a government shutdown. I mean, if nobody has an incentive
Well, I
to let this
certainly
thing
hope,
happen.
Donnie, that we do not, because these are people's lives that the shutdown is going to affect. These are 30,000 some state and federal and local, or not federal, state and local employees who are going to be without a paycheck, who are going to wonder how to feed their families and make their house payment and their car payment. I mean, that is nothing to play around with. So I certainly hope you're wrong. Nobody I know is doing that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anyone who thinks it's a good thing. In fact, we're planning, we talked about departments planning for a shutdown. The Senate will be shut down. The House will be shut down. We'll be going on COBRA. Our health insurance will be. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
want to tell you, I just can't imagine that there's anyone, even though there
Well,
were pundits early on who thought it might be a political thing, I don't think it's a good thing.
But if we
at
go
all.
to a government shutdown, if the government shutdown happens, then
Yeah.
doesn't that tell voters that somebody on one of the two sides decided that a shutdown is beneficial or a better option, the lesser of two evils? A government shutdown is a lesser of two evils versus caving in on this space and
Well,
ground in terms of how we want the budget to end up.
I mean, I do think there are some people who do not believe in compromise, which is really unfortunate. But that does seem to be part of what's happening, that you can't compromise. And we have to get to the point where we're willing to compromise. We didn't find it before the end of session, but to say this is planful is kind of frightening to me. You don't play with people's lives. So we do need to get to the point where we do compromise, where we understand that that's being a leader is compromising, finding a way out of this, and not just getting entrenched and having your partisan rhetoric. You represent all people, not just the people that elected you, all people, and I think that's where we need to go.
Okay. All right, well, great. Well, thank you guys very much for coming in and talking, and we'll find out during the next couple weeks, before the end of the month, we'll find out how this thing is going to shake itself out. And thank you for joining us, and have a good day.